Let's get out to our guest line. Is brought to you by Ninja Crispy as we welcome in Dave Pagnotta from the fourth period. Dave, really appreciate you giving us some time here today. I just rattled through all of the signings we've seen so far today, and for me, none more surprising than seeing Brock Boeser reunite with the Vancouver Canucks. What led to those two sides, we'll say, reconciling early on in free agency?
Yeah, this surprised me. It surprised a lot of people. I mean, this was a roller coaster ride for Brock throughout the entire season as they kept going back and forth in negotiations. Like this was a bit of a he took some things personally, and he was hurt. He felt disrespected at times, and his camp did with how the conversation kind of went. And credit to Vancouver, they kept pushing along, and Alvin and Rutherford decided that no, look, we want to try to still make this work. And they kept conversations going over the weekend, and they were able to finalize things today. But going into July 1, all indications were he was going to test the market, and you heard Edmonton and Boston and LA and other teams that were willing to get into the mix. Vancouver upped it with a couple extra years of term to get to a 7-year, and he sticks around.
What else do you think the Canucks can get up to? Because obviously there's been a lot of talk in that market. They need help down the middle, but I'm looking at their cap picture and I'm going, are they going to be able to get anything else done?
Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of juggling. Certainly. I mean, they add Kane to give him a little bit of mid-six stability, maybe on that second line. We'll see what happens where they're going to slot, Brock. Are they going to alter that a little bit? Defense. The decor seems pretty sound, but outside of that, they are looking at seeing where their mid-six kind of levels up with the rest of the group. It looks like Pius Suter is probably going to be priced out of Vancouver, seeing what options are available to him. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of where things kind of fall into place for the Canucks. They want to remain competitive as best they can, and a big key to getting Brock signed and also getting Demko to an extension and Garland to an extension. Those are all Quinn Hughes' buddies. So to keep the captain happy was also a bit of a priority here for the Vancouver Canucks so that they can perhaps keep him long-term.
A priority for the New York Rangers was getting stronger on the blue line. A two-parter here for you. 7x7 for Gavrikov. Is that maybe a little bit lower than you thought? And also, what are you hearing on the trade front in New York?
Yeah, certainly surprised. Honestly, I thought he was going to be in the eights after saying no to the LA Kings. And they went through negotiations until about at some point yesterday evening. And then at that point, they just decided, no, the numbers aren't going to work. The money's not going to work. So he goes to free agency, and he goes to the place everybody thought he was going to go to in New York in the Big Apple. So he locks in. He gets 7x7. Again, a little bit less than I think a lot of people anticipated, but he's happy with it. And now that you've got Keandre Miller in a deal going to Carolina, and this is an environment where Carolina wanted to bring in somebody big on that blue line. They wanted to bring in somebody young that can fit a role for them. Dmitry Orlov is moving on. Maybe Brett Burns comes back. They'd like to keep him around if they can for another year. Roddy Brindamore spoke so highly of him at the end of the season, especially with how he modified his game and adjusted his game. So we'll see what else the Hurricanes have up their sleeve. We know they're in on Nick Ehlers. Can they make anything else work? They got some good business done today with Logan Stankoven as well. So the Hurricanes still finding a way to find these shrewd type of moves. We'll see what the Miller deal unfolds once it's all said and done.
What's going on with the Nick Ehlers? He's the number one guy on our board, and obviously with Gavrikov and Boeser now gone, he's the only one of the top three still on the market. Do you think this could linger past today? Could this linger longer than tomorrow? What are you hearing on Ehlers?
It's possible this can go into tomorrow and maybe a little bit further into the week. And I think a big reason why is he has to juggle money versus environment. And by that, I mean, Carolina, for example, a clear cup contender. Does he want to go there for a little bit less, or does he want to cash in on a larger deal elsewhere? San Jose's got a ton of money that they're willing to spend. They're pretty much calling teams saying, hey, if you need an extra bump, give us a call because we've got extra money to burn. We've got to hit our floor and we want to spend. But he has to determine whether he wants to go through what Tyler Toffoli is going through right now, not chase another cup, go through a full rebuild, help some of the younger kids along the way. Ehlers wants to contend. He wants to keep contending. So that's kind of what he's juggling right now. And I think that's part of the reason, plus time zones. He's overseas. That plays a little factor too. 6 hours or whatever from the East. So, he wants to figure out what the best option is for him, family, all of that stuff. Do the Ducks get in the mix? Is it Columbus? Does he want to stay with Carolina? Is there another Cup contender that's going to step up and give him somewhere in the 8s versus somewhere in the 9s, like an environment like the Sharks?
I'm sitting here and I'm looking at Tanner Jeannot and the AAV and he got. Dvorak even gets into the 5s, granted on a 1-year deal, so it's a little bit different. But I think about those guys and the impact they can have on a team. And then I look at Granlund on the board and even to an extent Drouin. And you mentioned Suter. If I'm going if Jeannot's 3.4, these guys might all be north of 6, but of course those players are maybe managing a little bit of, like what you said with Ehlers, do they want to go to a contender or are they cashing in for the biggest ticket? Are we going to be just as blown away, do you think, with the money that the Granlunds and Suters get, or do you think it'll be a little bit more realistic because they're going to a contender, if that makes any sense?
I think Granlund's in the 6 to 7 range. Depending on term. Obviously he tried getting something done with Dallas. That didn't work out. Found out this morning that he was going to go to market. They tried to juggle a few things, but it's difficult. Now, keep in mind, we're in the offseason now. So teams can exceed the salary cap by 10% as long as they're cap compliant for the start of the season. So, some teams are willing to do that, whereas others find it a bit of a risk because nobody's willing to throw you a bone. No one is willing to help you out. So if you need to be cap compliant, you're going to have to deal out a roster player, and it's probably going to cost, or you're probably, going to take less in order to make that work. So, there are no lifelines that are out there in the National Hockey League. Things can get ruthless from time to time. So, for a guy like Granlund, obviously didn't work in Dallas, and maybe they haven't closed the door. Maybe Dallas, if they can maneuver the cap and move out Matt Dumba, who they've been actively trying to trade, and perhaps some other pieces, then maybe they circle back there or go in a different direction. But Granlund is somebody that I anticipate being in that 6 to 7, maybe slightly above kind of range. I wouldn't be surprised. By a Suter, you're probably looking somewhere around $5 million in that vicinity. Again, depending on terms. So, some teams are looking at them going, okay, we're interested. I know Philly was kicking the tires on Suter, but I don't think they want to get into that environment from a dollar side of things. So, they go in a different direction. Same with some of these other players. Jack Roslovic, what's he going to end up doing from that side of thing? You mentioned Drouin. There are going to be teams like the New York Islanders are looking to add somebody else up front after signing David Rittich earlier to add a new backup to the mix because there's some uncertainty surrounding Semyon Varlamov's future and his health. They wanted to solidify their backup position by bringing in Rittich. And, we'll see if the Islanders pounce on one of these guys. They're another team I'm looking at to see if they're going to spend some money and add somebody to add a little extra secondary scoring.
Last one before I let you go. I know you just hit on a couple of them there, but I'm going to ask you this anyways. It's the softball of all softballs. Yeah. Is there a team you're looking at and going, they're quiet right now and a little too quiet? Someone you think might be itching to make a big splash you're not hearing a lot about right now? Or we're not? Yeah,
Islanders from that side of things, from a mid-6. The other, there's – with how shallow this market has been, how this free agent pool has been, I think we're going to start to hear more on the trade front with a lot of teams. Now, we've seen some activity today, but there are some teams that are going to look around and say, how can I address my top 6? How can I bring in somebody that can help add some additional offense? Pittsburgh's been very quiet overall. Now, I do believe they've got a few deals in place with some depth players. We're likely to hear some signings from Pittsburgh later on today, probably in the later hours. But they also have, they also have guys like Raquel and Russ that they're willing to listen on still. And Russ' no movement clause has expired. He doesn't have any no trade protection anymore. So, from that side of things, I'm curious to see what else Pittsburgh has up their sleeve. I'm curious on Washington as well. They've got just under $7 million in cap space, and they want to remain competitive. They're another team that's poked around on Ehlers, but I don't know if they can create additional cap space in order to get into that ballpark of 8 to 9 for a contender. We'll see what happens there. But looking at that, and as I said, San Jose wants to spend. Anaheim wants to spend. Columbus wants to spend. They took care of some housekeeping, obviously, yesterday, but they're willing to spend more. So I'm looking at those types of teams to see what they may have up their sleeve over this next little bit. And of course, I know the Rangers have done some stuff already, getting Gavrikov, moving out Miller. But I'm curious to see what else they end up doing. I heard they're looking in the forward market as well.
I know it's a busy day. NHL insider, editor-in-chief of the Fourth Period, David Pagnotta. Appreciate you finding some time for us, David. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.